All right, moving on to the next session here. Next we have a panel on the IT/OT working group led by Josh Poster. Josh is our Staff Intelligence and Analyst Ops Manager at Auto-ISAC. He's also Vice Chair of the National Council of ISACs, known as the NIC, which is, again, a joint organization of 20 plus, I think, ISACs, Faye, right? And it was previously in program and project management at various transportation, infrastructure, and defense firms. Let's please welcome our panel host, Josh Poster.
Please come on up. I didn't realize I was coming out by myself. All right. And if you guys can indulge me for a second, my wife and I have been in our own little corner of the world for 18 months, so I promised her I'd take a selfie.
Oh,
hi, Cassandra.
That is precious.
All right. Human experience. It's so rare these days.
It is.
I'm excited. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I was told a while ago that, Josh, you're going to do a panel on IT and OT security. So first I had to figure out who we were going to bring in. So looking far and wide to try and find who that might be. Actually didn't have to go far at all. They're all here in the Auto-ISAC. So I'd like to introduce you all to those experts that we have here today. So first, we've got Yoav Levy, who is co-founder and CEO of Upstream Security. Really pleased to have you here today, sir. Longtime strategic partner of ours, and very welcoming to us by providing the Auto-ISAC staff with access to your Intel platform, and we use it quite often. So really appreciate that. Online, do we have Joel online?
Behind you.
Oh, okay, there we go.
There he is.
I'm just staring at myself right here in the screen. It's kind of a little odd. Hey, Joel. Hi.
Hey.
Joel Stokes.
Go.
So Joel is Unit Manager, North America of Manufacturing Security at Honda, and also the co-chair of the IT/OT Security Working Group at the Auto-ISAC. And then finally, Rebecca Faerber, who is the other co-chair of the same working group and Manufacturing Cybersecurity Program Manager at Ford. So welcome, guys.
Thank you.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
your time. Okay, so we'll jump right into it, and I'm sure we'll be talking probably this whole time. So let's get started. As your title implies, Manufacturing Cybersecurity Program Manager. You're responsible basically for ensuring the cybersecurity of Ford's production environments, right? Can you talk a little bit about your role, what you do there, and why Ford believes that OT security requires kind of like an increased focus of its overall security efforts?
Sure, absolutely. So my role is very specific and is focused on the industrial control space. So when we talk about OT, we tend to be talking about a broader spectrum of assets, but my program is specifically targeted at the industrial control space, the stuff that's bolted to the concrete inside the manufacturing facilities, and the unique and safety-related types of controls that we have to put in place for those assets. Just under a decade ago, Ford started to understand that cybersecurity within the manufacturing environment generally needed to be a subject of particular focus. We discovered that as we were trying to answer the question around how to allow vendors to access our plant floor systems in a secure and appropriate manner. And for anybody who has ever been in a plant, the concept of line of sight and safety are really primary, because we're talking about machine motion around human beings. So my program was stood up to address basically keeping human beings safe on the plant floor against cyber attacks that would create that are targeted against ICS.
So obviously really important to Ford dedicating a whole resource to that too, you know.
Whole bunch of resource, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I guess I would just add to that it's not just me. Obviously, actually, the first step on that journey, very importantly, was forming a coalition between our manufacturing business partners, those people who are the engineers and the operations staff, the people who are touching the machines, the people who understand the FMEA, the people who understand how to secure the machines next to the people. So that relationship was primary for us. Today, we have a coalition of the three elements, the three organizations who are responsible for cybersecurity within Ford, and that is the manufacturing engineering organization, manufacturing IT, and then cybersecurity. And we work together, we have an equal voice in everything that happens, and that works really well.
Really interesting. Yeah, we've gotten a chance to know each other over the past 9 months, and Joel as well. So Joel, we've been working together for a long time. I feel like I need to turn around to look at him. But
it's okay. It's all
okay,
good,
good. Okay. So, all right, I can see you kind of on the screen here. So, we've been working together for a long time. Helping to develop the IT and OT working group, and your position is really interesting. The more and more I learn about it, the more and more fascinated I get with it, because you really are purposefully sort of bridging the gap between IT and OT functions at Honda. So maybe, perhaps you could describe a little bit about your unique position, that unique responsibility, and why Honda believes, it's important to purposely connect those what were probably once sort of like verticals at your organization.
Sure. So I guess the first thing is it's always tough to follow your CISO, once he's talked about some sort of event that's going on, right? So, but I thank Stephen for his presentation and the information that he was able to share. And part of what he shared is the reason that I'm in the position I'm in today, right? So looking at the landscape holistically from a Honda perspective, we really have taken a perspective of we have very well-established enterprise IT practices within our environment. And the next steps in that were product security and OT security. So we joked before, and I'll go ahead and say it because Rebecca is looking for it, but I'm kind of that foam in the crack, if you will, between enterprise security, OT security, and product security, right? So it takes a lot of collaboration between those groups, and we've recognized that. And so I've been kind of tasked with identifying where we need to mature our OT security practice, but then also bridge the gap for enterprise security in the manufacturing space. And as product security has continued to emerge, right, more electronics in vehicles, then we have more of a responsibility from a manufacturing and an OT perspective to make sure that we're securing those as we move forward.
Yeah, really, really cool. I mean, I find it so interesting that you guys have, really purposely tried to address that gap through, not only that position, but just integrating those together. It's, I think that not only myself, but others on the IT working group have found that a really interesting aspect of it too, because I don't think, many have really begun to do that kind of thing in such a direct way.
Robust way.
Yeah.
For sure.
So, Yoav, Upstream, great company. You guys have been focusing on the cyber threat to automotive for quite a while now, I guess. What drives you? What drives Upstream as a capable cybersecurity company to focus specifically on the threat to automotive?
Yeah. So maybe I give you some background on why we decided to go specifically on the automotive industry. So actually, I spent my career in different areas in cybersecurity. So building like firewalls, network security, EDRs, WAF. Eventually, when we decided to build our own company, my partner and I, we were looking at the right industry. So we were looking at what's the problem we're trying to solve. And when we look at IoT or complex IoT, like vehicles, very complex IoT devices, we're saying, okay, this is a complex solution, a complex problem to solve. And we can bring some of the capabilities we have from, we learned over the years. And we tried to find area that is meaningful, that we could create an impact, important for safety. And this is the reason actually why we went over specifically on the automotive industry. Both from we love cars, and also it's a very complex and problem to solve.
That's the thing that I've found a lot of within the people in this room, those in the auto-ISAC and the industry, is that, they like cars.
Exactly.
Right? But they also want to, I don't know, they have like some sort of intrinsic need to ensure safety. Like, safety is a real focus of that. So very interesting to hear. You, to this point, have put out several iterations of your annual report, your annual, automotive threat report, really. And from, what I've read over the years, you all have been sort of focusing kind of holistically on the threats that face the automotive environment. So IT, OT, and the product. So this year's in particular, you kind of highlighted the supply chain security risks that we're all kind of facing. What do you believe, are the most imperative security issues that the automotive industry should be sort of focusing their efforts on, focusing their time and their money and their management on?
Yeah. So just as a background, we are, as Upstream, we are tracking or analyzing the cybersecurity public and incident, and we have like an annual report that we are providing also to Auto-ISAC and the industry to show the trends of what's going on in the industry in different areas, like you mentioned, IT, OT, product. I think it's not something that you can say this is like one thing that you need to focus. It's probably like, different areas. We mentioned supply chain threats as one of them. But when you think about like how hackers are actually thinking and working, they're actually a P&L organization, which means they want to make money. And they look at ROI about like, what's the investment we're going to do and how much money we're going to make out of it. I'm not talking about government, of course. I'm talking about, bad actors. So when they are looking at, well, how are we going to get in and what is in it for us, like how can we make money out of it, if we can do like, steal data, ransomware data, or what would be the easiest ways for us to get in with the less effort, and how can we make money out of it. So I would say it's actually the convergence between IT and OT, and because they're used to hack into IT systems. Yeah. They know how to hack servers, they know how to do lateral movement from servers to other components. And this is usually where we see them start, at the IT space, and then lateral movement, and they're trying to go into the OT or into the vehicles, and again, in the easiest and fastest way with the minimum effort from their side.
Yeah. So, I think that the automotive industry is not necessarily particularly vulnerable versus other, say, manufacturing type of industries. Do you think that, the bad guys are trying to focus in on the auto industry for any particular reason? I mean, we're really reliant, as, we'll probably hear from Rebecca, on manufacturing goods. Like, we have to do something, right? Have to produce. So, do you see any perceived threat from these kind of threat actors against the automotive industry in particular?
Yeah, I think as part of the report, what we are also documenting is about the difference between white hat and black hats. Like, typically, when it starts, you only see like white hats, like, demonstrations or researchers that are trying to show that they can actually hack. But I think last year was the first year we saw more black hat than white hat, which means that, bad actors manage to make money out of it. And I think this is usually the area that you see a trend that, when you see more black hats, this is usually where they can find money and they can actually make money out of it.
Yeah, with them, it's pretty much all about the money, right?
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, as I mentioned, we've been working together for like 9 months now, pretty much every week, either, our planning weeks or the other week, which is our IT/OT working group meetings. We've been working really hard with Joel to develop agendas that are useful, to build trust within the membership, and try and get others to join us to do this. You've shared a lot of information in there. You personally, as well as the other working group members, it's really impressive to hear the stuff that we're talking about. And, to me, sometimes it seems like it's not really sensitive, but from what I understand, some of this is. We've been sharing a lot on things like vulnerability management programs, best practices on gaining like corporate or leadership support to help fund efforts in securing OT. Let's see what else. Establishing sort of like basic components for building a cybersecurity program in OT. Yeah. So, what have been some of the most valuable takeaways that you've gotten from that working group? What do you think that has benefited you, benefited Ford, maybe even with sharing during these meetings?
Sure. So, I think there's so much to learn, and I think that you get to a certain point in anything that you're doing where you are convinced that you don't know anything. So you get well into that I don't know what I don't know quadrant pretty quickly, and the participation in the ITOT working group really helps with that feeling of swimming outside of your depth. I would say so many of the speakers these past 2 days have spoken to ITOT considerations, maybe without even realizing that they were thinking about it. So anytime anybody's talking about supply chain risks, the very first stop on your supply chain are your manufacturing facilities. So if you're thinking about supply chain risk, you're talking about your manufacturing risk. You're talking about your OT risk and the IT systems that support it. So it's that kind of connection that really gets made in that ITOT working group. And it's that kind of communication that we're able to help all of our members formulate when they're trying to go to an IT budget meeting and ask for money for training for automation engineers, right? This is not something that's forthcoming. People aren't thinking about their automation engineers needing specific training in how to spot a phishing email, but guess what they do? So the ITOT working group has been building this trust, as you said, and we have been sharing very freely with each other within that safety framework. And I think from a personal standpoint, it gives me a sense of comfort, and that's a very personal thing, that we are engaging in this sharing of vulnerability together, the other kind of vulnerability where we are asking of each other, I don't really understand how to do this, can you help me? And I think that's the most powerful thing that's happening there. And when that foundation is built, when all of our members have a vulnerability detection, management, and remediation strategy that works for them, when they have an asset inventory solution that works for them, when we all have that level of maturity, then the adversaries have much less chance to really hit us all. And let me tell you folks, the adversaries are sharing. They're sharing their information. There is no reason we should not be sharing ours, right? They might sell it, might be open source, but what they learn in attacking me, they're gonna use to attack you. So we should be all engaged in the ITOT working group.
Plug. So I really appreciate that. I mean, it's always interesting to me to understand, kind of why you would want to spend time, why a company would want to, dedicate time and resources to participating in that. So, really enlightening. I really appreciate that. Sure. I know it's not me. I can tell it's not my pretty face. I can see it right there on the screen. It's definitely not the reason. So, Joel, so little thoughts, some thoughts from Rebecca on, what she found valuable, what Ford has found valuable from spending time in the ITOT working group. I know that you've said many of the same things. Many of the other participants in that working group have said much the same. So we just had our first IT-centric tabletop exercise. It was, an IT related scenario. First one that we've done at the Auto-ISAC, having previously been pretty focused in on product security. So, pretty enlightening to me. I think it's some of the members as well. We've got plans within the ITOT working group to evaluate our priority intelligence requirements that we developed over about a year ago to make sure that they're related or relatable to IT and OT security information needs. What else do you think we should be doing to help support each other? How can we help each other better secure the auto industry together?
So, Rebecca she hit the nail on the head. She made a lot of good points. And it's not about what any individual group knows or any individual company knows. It's really about how do we share information, and how do we make the overall community better, right? So the tabletop exercise that we just went through, it was fairly enlightening to me. Many companies either had not been through that exercise before, so they had not had the forethought of when to share and what to share. And so, Honda, we took away some things that, maybe we have some triggers that we need to reevaluate in terms of how we share things. But I think really it's about understanding that while the particular incident you may be going through is not necessarily beneficial for yourself, when something's going on, that's going to be reciprocal, right? So it may benefit someone else. And so while you may not benefit from something you're sharing particularly, it's about the greater good. And so in a lot of cases, it's going to come back to you, multiple folds over. So I really encourage anyone who has not been engaged in the ITOT working group up to this point to do so. We've had a lot of great discussions. We've said some things that may be obvious to some and not to others. And so, we're just continuing to build that relationship with companies that are in the same space. We're trying to make everyone else safer, right? And by doing that, we make ourselves safer. So it's really kind of help me help you type situation.
Yeah, it's the types of information that we can share together is they don't have to be particularly sensitive, and it's something that you had said. You kind of you think it would be obvious, but maybe it's not to others. Is a pretty interesting comment, because I think that we have really understood sort of I don't want to say disparity, but the maturity levels, between, say, some of our newer organizations who are kind of, just starting, yeah. Right? And learning from, folks like you, Rebecca, and you, Joel, on how your organizations do it, so that they can kind of do it right from the start,
right?
As opposed to sort of retroactively, trying to make it happen. Have you all, what kind of efforts has it taken, or what kind of lift has it taken to try and sort of retroactively get cybersecurity involved into your OT operations?
I think that the wrong way to do it is get a bunch of comments written against you by your internal audit organization. That's not super fun. So, right.
It's definitely a catalyst, I would imagine.
It can be, but you really need to have the lever that is moving cybersecurity on your plant floor, not be the auditor that comes there once a year. That cannot be their motivation, because guess what? It's not motivation. It's just a hassle. The lesson that we learned is that these engineers, these maintenance folks, the folks that are on the plant floor, the thing that they understand intrinsically inside of themselves is safety. And they understand that if a machine starts to move erratically, if you defeat a safety instrumented system, if you defeat the controls on the safety code in a PLC, you're going to hit somebody. Okay? When you can bring that knowledge into them in that way, cybersecurity, patching, password controls, all of that follows naturally. So that's a good way to do it and a bad way to do it.
And, Joel, I hope it's okay to mention, but you had, a couple meetings ago, a couple ITOT working group meetings ago, you had talked about taking advantage of downtime. Downtime in manufacturing is bad, right? But now there's not a whole lot of choice in some instances. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys have been doing with that time?
Sure, absolutely. So, unfortunately, with the chip shortage and things that are going on in our environment, we've been able to take advantage of those situations to evaluate and do risk assessments and evaluate controls and remediate them, right? So even if you're not producing for whatever reason, we look to use that as an advantage and to strengthen our controls from a security perspective. Sure, it's not a value add immediately to the bottom line, but it definitely strengthens us so that when we are producing and when we have to produce, right, and those are critical times right now, that we're able to do so, and we feel that we're doing that from a more secure platform, and are able to do that much more confidently than we might have if we didn't have those windows to be able to secure platforms during those downtimes.
Yeah, good use of time. I'm sure your plant managers appreciate not interrupting actual operation time. So we've talked quite a bit about what we're doing here at the Auto-ISAC, trying to really sort of holistically address the security environment by creating the IT/OT working group, doing a couple exercises. Yoav, you now and the rest of the audience have kind of gotten some insight as to what we're doing here. Understanding how we're growing our scope, trying to take this holistic approach to increasing cybersecurity, not just for our members, but for the industry itself. You have any thoughts on, what you think the industry can continue to do in growing in the space, or, how we might better increase our security posture as either an organization as the Auto-ISAC or as an industry?
Yeah. So I think to increase the security posture, it's about how you communicate within the organization and how you share, what you learn externally with the industry. So I would look at, creating like a fusion centers, which means like taking people from different organizations, cybersecurity, and sharing, even internally within the company, sharing information between enterprise, IT, OT, vehicle security, etc. Sharing information, understanding the risk, sitting together in the same room, and I think these fusion centers can help to better understand the threat landscape, and eventually I'm sure that sharing information between the industry through Auto-ISAC, this is probably the right way to improve the posture, security posture.
So you probably have some insight as to how some of the industry is doing that. Have you, what's it look like out there? Are people looking to do that purposefully more and more?
Yeah, I think people are now moving from, just trying to check the box on regulation to really take cybersecurity seriously and much more beyond just checking the box on cybersecurity regulations. And definitely some of the OEMs are taking measures and a lot of efforts in cybersecurity, and we're seeing this in building vehicle SOC, like VSOC, and investing in research and getting like intelligence and hiring the right talents within the company. So definitely we're seeing this.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you mentioned regulation. We don't have a lot around information sharing, but
we're about to.
It's possibly coming, right?
Oh yeah, there are several bills out there passed out of committee just recently.
So I'm interested to know, with the sort of difficulties that some companies have just communicating internally with regards to incidents, IT getting information to you guys on the shop floor. How do you think, or have you guys started to think about how you might be addressing, that aspect of it, that sort of rapid information sharing, not just internally, but, externally?
Sure, that's something that we have. So again, IT is a very mature space. There's lots of pathways out of the company, within the company to communicate, here's an incident, here's what we need to do about it. Our challenge, like so many others that I even heard about today, is communicating at the appropriate levels, the right amount of information to the right person at the right time so they can use it. And when you involve a plant and you involve OSHA, and you have personnel relations, and you have the union, and you have salaried folks, it spiderwebs all the communications that are required. And so having a single pathway, it can't be a single person because redundancy, but a single pathway or single communication office that you turn to, and no one pays attention to anybody else's communication but that, right? And that communication office is responsible for communicating out as well when you limit it, and it's a trusted set of individuals, and everybody can sit back. But that is still a work in progress.
Yeah, and it will be, yeah. So thanks, guys. I guess we're up on time. Really appreciate your participation. Yoav, thanks so much for being a strategic partner. We really appreciate that. Thank you for joining this particular panel. Thanks for being a sponsor of the event. If you guys haven't visited the Upstream booth, please do so. Rebecca, really appreciate all your work on the IT/OT working group. It's been great to get to know you. Joel, thanks for joining us from gorgeous, beautiful South Carolina. Really appreciate you doing so remotely.
The alternate Georgia. Exactly.
So thanks everybody for your time. I really appreciate you listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.